Hey, welcome into the Storycraft Cafe. I am your host, Hank Garner. Today, I am super excited to welcome Kelsey Miller to the show. She's got a brand new book that released today, and it's called Old Money. And if I can get the glare off of my Kindle screen, you can see it there. What a fantastic book. I loved it. I know you will too. Kelsey, welcome to the show and happy release day.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for reading. Thank you for the kind words. Thank you for having me. It's really a nice welcome.
Absolutely. I know release day can be crazy and your fingers are crossed and all the butterflies and it has this thing that I created, is it going to resonate with people? So how's release day going, and what was the build up leading up to release day? Did you sleep at all this past weekend?
It's funny you asked that. I would have done okay, but last night my 5-year-old woke up at 4 in the morning and just sort of wanted to hang out. I don't know. So it wasn't nerves last night. I swear. I did good job with my sleep hygiene, but what are you gonna do about kids? Yeah, but no, the lead up to release day it's always it's always a funny feeling because not only is it you're waiting to see what happens and everything like that, and you've hopefully done everything you can to prepare, but I think it must be the case with books, or maybe with any creative project. It's this thing that for the most part has just existed in your brain or on your computer screen, this thing that you work on in a sweatshirt and computer glasses for a million years, and then all of a sudden it's out there in the universe, and it takes a minute for your brain to, I think, fully absorb that. So that's the sort of overwhelming feeling of release day, but it's good overall. It's just odd and surreal.
What I always find fascinating is that on release day, you've got this thing that you worked on for a couple of years, in a lot of cases. By the time you draft it, do some editing, turn it in, get edits back, and you go through this cycle over and over again until you get it to its final stage, and then you wait, and you're sick of the book by that point because you've seen it so much. But then when release day comes, you all of a sudden fall in love with the story all over again, and it's this super weird thing that nothing else in life quite compares to it. It's pretty.
You're really right about that. I hadn't thought about that, but you're absolutely right. Yeah.
So how did you get started writing fiction? You've done all manner of writing, editing, been novel adjacent in a lot of ways. What was your the impetus to start telling stories?
Well, I think certainly all writers I know, but probably most people I know have sort of a story that itches at them, maybe,
Yes. I think we're a storytelling species. I think there's something unique about humanity.
Absolutely. 100% agree. And this was just one of those stories that did keep sort of itching at me.
Yeah.
And, every once in a while you gotta follow that impulse and see if it takes you anywhere, see if it leads anywhere, and maybe it won't. And then, okay, you've given it a try and you move on to the next. But, in this case, it just did. And that's really the simplest answer. I just couldn't really shake it.
Now, you have worked in journalism and you've written nonfiction. Is this your first novel that you've written?
It is. Yes.
One thing that I love to ask people, especially journalists, because I always get one particular answer from almost everyone, but then when you get them to go a little deeper, that's where the interesting answers to this comes from. One thing I love to ask people is, in your other endeavors, writing nonfiction or journalism specifically, are there tools that you picked up along the way that have helped you as a novelist? And I'll go ahead and take the one everyone answers. I'll go ahead and give you that and take it off the table, kind of like in Wheel of Fortune where they give you RSTLNE, or whatever. Okay. Everyone says, well, being a journalist helped me to work on a deadline. And that's That's a wonderful answer. That's but that's not really what I'm asking. Like, did did your work in telling stories that are true or reporting on stories, is there anything about that that put specific tools in your novelist toolbox?
Well, I've always been kind of a research hound,
Yeah.
and I would say, that has served me well, certainly in journalism, but even in journalism, you can go a little bit too far,
Mm.
and in fiction, it's definitely helped in this regard because, even though this is a world of your own making. I don't know. For me, I just found like research was still really very necessary, even if it didn't, even if it only indirectly fed the story. And so I would say that both the instinct and the skills I developed in terms of researching, and also the I suppose the ability to recognize when it was time to stop was another skill.
Yeah,
Because you can spend your whole life doing that if you're, so inclined.
and that is an overlooked skill because one deadly cycle that a lot of novelists get sucked into is the the edit, the rewrite cycle, and not knowing when to just walk away and say it's finished. It may not be perfect. It may not, you know, for the rest of your life, you may, wake up thinking, oh my gosh, why didn't I finish with this scene or, whatever. But, that those are those things that can plague you forever. But the ability to put a bow on it and walk away, that is a skill that has to be earned, I think.
Yeah, yeah, and just sort of even like as you point out, that feeling of something not being done, kind of eternally.
Yeah.
I think sometimes you have to just sort of accept the fact that is never really going to go away. You just have to sort of live with that, and that's part of the deal, and that's okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Kelsey, your bio says you're a culture writer. What does that mean exactly?
Well, it's funny. People have asked me that before, and I think I used to work at a website called Refinery 29, and my editors there often referred to me as an agnostic writer. And I thought, oh, that's a good term because I really was sort of all over. It just meant that I wrote all over the place. I covered a
Yeah,
bunch of different areas.
sure.
I write a lot about. Things related to the body and anti-diet culture. I write a lot about, I do a lot of cultural criticism. Um, I have a background in film and in theater too, so there's that element there. And I just basically uh, found that my sort of beats over the years that I developed really just sort of became kind of culturally specific and just sort of the kind of stuff that people might talk about, not
Yeah.
necessarily, whether it's in different areas. Yeah. So I think that's really kind of the most accurate and specific term that I can come up with for what I do, really.
Were you a theater kid?
Oh, big time. Big
Yeah.
time.
So many novelists specifically that I've gotten to know were theater kids or former actors or
Huh.
whatever. And I think what I've determined is that um, the writing a novel, you get to be all of the actors, you get to be the casting director, you get to be the playwright, you get to wear all of the hats and be in control of everything. Would you agree with that?
Yes, excuse me. I'm just sort of bowled over by this uh, thing that you've unlocked. I will have to sit with this for a while, but like, wow. Sounds about right.
Yeah, yeah.
I think you might have nailed it.
Yeah. I my wife and I have 5 kids and they were all in theater growing up and they're all creative types, writers, painters, all of that. And I've just watching them, I think that's that I think that holds true.
Not
There's
wonderful.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's yeah. So anyway. So how did you get started in journalism in writing about culture? Like, how does one, you know, get into that world? And you know, there's not a course in college about, you know, being a cultural critic or a an agnostic writer, to use your words. How do you get started in that?
Well, yeah, in college, I was a film major and with, you know, a special concentration in screenwriting. And I
Hmm.
really thought that that was going to be my thing. And when I first graduated, as I said, I worked in the film world. I assisted directors and worked in production for a while. And at the same time, I was also in sort of a, you know, with a group of friends of mine, I was in a writing group for years. And I was working on different things and trying different things out. And it, it really took me, I would say, until my mid late 20s to realize, like, oh, this just isn't my genre. This isn't my
Yeah.
you know, my best format or something like that. This isn't where I feel like I'm doing my best work, but also just like not I don't enjoy it. It doesn't flow. It's, and you got to figure that out. I'm a big advocate for figuring out what it is you don't want to do,
Mm,
and that being
yeah.
just as important as learning what you do want to do. And sometimes it just takes trying and learning it, you know, in the field. And I did. And so I was working at kind of an interim job that was in the like adjacent to the film world, and I was taking writing classes at
Yeah.
night here in the city. And I was just sort of getting back into writing, you know, essays and even writing about movies, and it was just the kind of thing where I was writing these things just sort of because it couldn't be helped. You know, it was the kind of thing where I would have been writing it in a journal if I hadn't been
Yeah.
writing it in a class. And I had a wonderful teacher named Jack Murnahan in a couple of those classes who, at one point, just at the end of class, he was like, you know, not everyone should do this, but you should try to do this, you know, as a job.
Yeah.
You should try. And it was very, it wasn't like you're amazing. It wasn't like, oh, it's going to be hard. It wasn't, you know, very speechy. It was just like, not everyone should, but you really should. And you should try. And having that kind of permission or directive, I guess was really what I needed to pivot in that direction professionally, as opposed to just take classes. And so I just sort of started poking around and doing freelance and talking to people, and you know, eventually just like pitched my way into a job. Yeah.
Yeah, those are what I found some of the best ways to get into something is not that you've been handed something when you achieve a certain degree. It's that you kind of build a specialty in something, and then someone kind of sees that, you know, that thing that you've been working at, and there's something dynamic about the way that ball unspools or something.
Yeah. And sometimes you really do need a nudge, or at least I did, or you
Yeah,
need somebody who's, you know, not the own, you know, I'm really impressed with people who can follow their own instincts into this field.
yeah,
Um, but for me, I really feel like it was, you know, having a voice that wasn't just the voice in my own head,
right.
being like, just give it a shot, you know?
Yeah. Well, you've written two other books. I'll Be There for You, which is a book about friends, the TV
Mhm.
show, and a memoir, Big Girl. What was the kind of genesis of these projects? From what you've talked about writing, about film and things, I can kind of see where the friends comes from. What about the memoir? How did that come about?
Well, one of the things I was writing about a lot, I said that I write a lot about stuff in terms like about bodies, and specifically like size and anti-diet culture and the kind of biases around um, body biases and beauty standards and things like that. And I speak in general terms because it's such a broad area. It's not just about like weight and thinness and fatness and stuff like that. But I was writing about that in a column called The Anti-Diet Project at Refinery 29 for several years. And that was something I started. It was very much a personal project. And it kind of blew up into this bigger thing. And I was writing it right at the time when, at the very beginning of the time when people in the mainstream, world and in mainstream media were also kind of discovering this concept of body positivity and body diversity and things like that. And so I guess it struck a chord, and it really did flourish, this column. And because of that, I basically, people started saying, you should write a book. And again, it was maybe the other people kind of being like, hey, have you thought about this? To be like, oh gosh, all right, I guess I could. I guess that's what people maybe do. And I met my wonderful agent at the time, who helped me kind of hone the idea. And I don't know, within a year, I had written a memoir somehow. Yeah.
I've always been fascinated with memoir. That the chief difference, as I see it, in autobiography and memoirs. Autobiography to me seems to be a cradle to grave kind of telling of your entire story, whereas memoirs more of a glimpse through a window at a particular time or a particular experience or something like that. There's a focus to it, and this is. I'm trying to think of good words to use that won't be misconstrued, because memoir a lot of times tends to read like a novel. There's a certain dynamic to the storytelling that goes into it. Not to say that it's not 100% true. That I don't mean that. I just mean that there's a dynamic sense to the storytelling that feels a lot of times like a novel, even though it's your experience with whatever this particular topic is. In having written nonfiction, having now written a novel, and then the memoir, kind of stacked between those two, how do you feel like the spectrum of the different styles of writing, the different genres, the different elements of writing differ? And am I just full of hot air, or is that a fair assessment?
No, I think you touched on, something really accurate. I had not thought of that memoir, has that relationship to novel in that way. But I think you're right. I mean, it's a genre, as you say, that's like, it's based on memory, and it's like looking at either a section of your life or a certain element of your life, looking through a very specific lens. And I guess, yeah, when you're writing fiction, you have to be specific in that way too. I would say, though, I think, at least for me, and others may disagree, but I think in general, I need to find it. I need there to be an arc. It doesn't really matter what I'm writing about, the Friends book, everything like that. And for me, it's about finding the arc. When I was writing the Friends book, when I was, I don't know, maybe a third of the way through, I totally restructured it. And I can't remember what my initial structure was, but I think that's because as I was writing, I was like, oh, no, this is the arc of it. This is what it is. And you have to sort of find your way.
Yeah.
Sometimes, for me at least, I got to jump in and find the path.
Yeah. Yeah. So that brings us to the new novel, Old Money. Were you a fan of thrillers, or these kind of stories that set your nerves on edge a little bit, like kind of looking at the aspects of human nature that give us the willies a little bit? Like, were you a fan of that before deciding to try your hand at it?
Absolutely. Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I find it, as many people do, I find it oddly comforting and soothing. And I just love, I guess it's my version of a roller coaster. I do not like roller coasters, but I love a good thriller.
Yeah. So what came first when thinking about this book? Was it characters like Alice? Was it the premise of kind of I guess what I'm asking is, when you start thinking about a book like this, are you thinking about a character and her experience? Are you thinking about a a plot concept and how you might be able to wrap a character up in that? Like, what's that initial seed of the story? How does that come to you?
Well, in this case, it was really kind of little images and bits and pieces and themes, I suppose, that were
Yeah.
coming to mind. I was thinking about, the stuff that sticks with us from childhood, those fun, which is often things, like maybe like a weird commercial we remember, or like a news story or something like that, something that was on TV, or something that, an event, whatever it is, like something in the patchwork of our lives that really sticks with us. And the story that we often tell about, like, oh, I remember this time at Christmas when I was 8 and this happened, or something like that, right? And they can seem like such small things, but ultimately, those become, the stories we tell about ourselves, and the stories we tell about ourselves become our lives and our identity. And it's really kind of a very big, powerful thing. It can really, really take over your life. And I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about somebody who had one of those, whatever it was, like thing they couldn't let go of, or
Mm,
something that, again, this is a common experience, perhaps a wrong that they were a part of, or that happened to them, that they feel needs to be righted. And what would happen if they decided to revisit it, or if it sort of came back, in a way. And I was thinking about stuff like that, and that's really where the story came from. Yeah.
I was reading through some reviews, comments that people had posted like over on NetGalley, and one person said, and I'm just going to paraphrase, but they said, "I absolutely love stories about rich people behaving badly," and I just thought that after reading the book, I was like, "Yeah, that's
Yeah.
like." Was there an element of that when you were first thinking about it? Like, let's put some people with obnoxious privilege, give them a hard situation and see what they do with it.
Oddly, that I don't really know when that became a part of it. But although, I mean, yeah, like so many people, I love those stories too. I'm like, I don't know, maybe
Yeah.
was I just watching Succession at the time and that's how this happened? I don't know. I think it part of it was informed by the setting that I chose, and I didn't
Yeah.
choose the setting necessarily because it's such a privileged sort of enclave in
Right.
general, and it's because it's very much based on a real place, but because of it's sort of like history and mysterious beauty and kind of magicalness to it, yeah, and kind of
Yeah.
its you know enclosedness.
Yeah. Um, an interesting thread, and I didn't think about this until we started talking, and some things just kind of come out in conversation. But we were talking about memoir and visiting your memories and writing about that. Well, this book kind of has an element to that because this is a crime that happened years ago, and we're now working through people's memories of it, and like you said earlier, the stories that we tell about ourselves, and how we kind of shape the reality around what we would like for people to think, maybe not exactly the truth of the matter. The like that seems to be a theme that surfaces as in the book. um, when you first start writing a book, are you thinking about theme? Are you one of the writers that said, I really would love to tell a story about this, and then a story crops up around it? Or are you the kind of writer who writes the story and then looks back over it and says, oh wow, I didn't even realize this theme was there, but it obviously was something I was wrestling with? Or do you fit in either one of those camps?
Well, it's my first novel, but
Yeah.
I would say, just if I'm speaking generally about my work, I think it's probably closer to the latter.
Hmm.
It really wasn't until I even finished this book that I realized, oh, I think it's part of it was influenced even by the previous book that I had written, the book about the show Friends, which sounds odd,
Yeah.
but that, a theme that emerged, very, immediately in that one, but became even bigger than I thought, was the power of nostalgia, because this is like a
Mm.
TV show from the 90s that was still this like massive global hit. and it's just so wild to me. And I think I must have had some just like residue of that hanging around in my brain, thinking about the power of nostalgia and the different ways that can manifest. So yeah, I think it's more like probably closer to the latter. Yeah.
Yeah. An interesting thing about nostalgia is, and I haven't read the Friends book, so please forgive me. But one thing that I've realized is that my memories of some things are much better than the actual thing was. And if I could just live with my memories of it, I'd be much happier than revisiting it and kind of bursting the bubble, and that's an interesting thing about nostalgia, especially when giving dire circumstances like we're seeing in old money. Some things are better left alone, and just to be what you have made it into instead of what it actually was.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, certainly. And,
Yeah.
sometimes you can't go home again is maybe you shouldn't go home again, you know?
Ooh, that's a great way of saying that. When writing a mystery, a thriller like this, where there are twists and turns, and I'm trying not to give anything away because it's release day and people should go grab the book and read it for themselves and enjoy all the ups and downs and the 90-degree hairpin corners that you send us on down. Um, but when you are writing the book, do you plan out kind of all the twists and turns ahead of time? Are you discovering them as you go? And then, if you're that kind of writer, at the end of the first draft, do you then kind of sketch out the book and figure out what's going on? Like, what's your writing process as far as planning or editing? Or, do you edit up front or, after the first draft?
Golly, what I discovered when I was writing this book
Yeah.
is that it's just, at least for me, extremely profoundly in every way different writing fiction than writing nonfiction. Writing fiction is just so different. I
Yeah.
couldn't, although I talked about the tools that I did rely on, I was like, all these other things, that I'd come to rely on myself as a writer had just sort of abandoned me, and I think, yeah, I mean, in general, in the past, writing nonfiction, I do a lot of editing as I go. It feels kind of done by the time I get to the end of the first draft. Of course, there's always edits and revisions and sometimes rewrites, but
Yeah.
this was like, I felt like I had to find my way over and over and over again. And I also had to rely on help from my editor in a way that, I hadn't before. In the process, not just when I got to the end of a draft. And I did rewrite so much more than I have ever in anything else. Yeah. I mean, there definitely were certain elements of the story that did not change, that I knew from the beginning, kind of, things that remained as anchors in there, thank God. But a lot of things really did change. Yeah.
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 What are you working on now? If we know anything about the publishing industry, this book has probably been off of your desk for several months now while the machinery of publishing, grinds on. What are you working on these days?
Well, right now I am mostly doing just like short form stuff. I'm doing a
Yeah.
little bit, giving myself a little break from the long form at the moment. All the while aware that, that itch will come back, and sooner or later something will come knocking around my brain and I will have to sit down and see if it goes anywhere. But for now, I'm just I'm writing journalism. I'm writing food stories. I'm writing essays. I'm doing some editing. I'm doing things like that and letting my author brain kind of reset and wait for the next thing.
Love it.
I do have some ideas, but they're very, very little in the background right now.
I'm sure you do. I've not met a writer yet who, the most trite question that an interviewer could ever ask is, where do you get your ideas from? Ideas are not the problem, generally, from my experience. It's like, which idea am I going to pull down out of the ether and and give my time and attention to. Ideas are not the problem, but
Yeah, there you go.
Old Money, available everywhere today. Go grab it at your local bookstore. If you don't have a great local bookstore, we'll put links to it in the show notes to make it easy for folks to find. You can grab it from Amazon. I'm assuming there's an Audible version
Hmm.
out today. I have not listened to it yet. Have you gotten a chance to sample any of it?
I haven't gotten a chance to sample it just yet, but I'm familiar with the narrator, and I'm an audiobook fan myself,
Yeah, me too.
and I think people will be. I think people will be pleased with it. Yeah.
Love it. Love it. Kelsey, this has been so much fun chatting. If folks are just discovering you and want to dig into, more of what you do and follow along with your journey, where is a good place for them to find you online?
Sure. You can find me on social. I'm at Ms. Kelsey Miller on Instagram, and I'm on my Facebook page is there as well. My website, kelseymiller.com. Yeah, I'm around.
Great. We'll link those up as well. Kelsey, been great talking with you, and congrats on release day.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Hank.
Yeah. See you guys later.